Coming up on We Talk News this week, could crypto reform be the thing that gets safe banking passed? Senator Schumer is working the political trenches in the nation's capital, while on the other side of the aisle, Senator Rand Paul says safer banking is not a pressing priority for him or the Senate, and it is unlikely banking reform will pass. We talked to NORML's Morgan Fox to get the latest on the federal front, where we find out if the DOJ or the DEA or whomever will have the final say on moving cannabis off the CSA or onto a new schedule. Plus, a huge $700 million international Ponzi scam in cannabis leads to 9 arrests and is traced to a house in the Dominican Republic. And, not sure you've heard this, but it is the week of 420 on April 20th, the first time this unofficial holiday for the celebration of cannabis has fallen on a Saturday since 2019. Amazingly, since then, there are now 15 more legal states for adults to use cannabis, so everyone is expecting sales records for one day. And some 420 events have been postponed due to lack of support, and that includes one in the state of Virginia, where Joe Parsons tells us about one in his own backyard. Others will be cranking from California to Maine. Those stories and coast-to-coast cannabis reports on We Talk News with Alaina Pinto. Next.
Music Studio.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of cannabis news from coast to coast. I'm Alaina Pinto. With this being the week of 420, celebrations, concerts, and retail sales records are all expected to be broken. And while that's going on, the scene in Washington, D.C. continues to get bogged down by partisan politics. The latest attempt of Democrats who were trying to piggyback their safer banking initiative to the current talks about cryptocurrency reform. And while the Republicans, and in this case, Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, said safer banking is, quote, unlikely, and that there are more, quote, pressing issues for the Senate to focus on. That partisan divide in Congress continues to deepen. But here are some facts recently released by Vanxt, one of the top employment platforms in the country. 540,000 plus jobs in the cannabis industry increased by 5.3% year over year. Sales are forecasted to surpass $28 billion this year, a mark that is 10% increase year over year. Since 2019, 15 states have legalized adult use for a total of 24 states. 38 have decriminalized it with various medical programs, and more than half of the adults over 21 in the USA now have access to legal cannabis. Plus, 88% approve of legalization of the plant medicine. Yet this plant is still listed as Schedule I on the Controlled Substances Act, with supposedly no medicinal application. It is still illegal at the federal level, causing lawsuits, an increase in the illicit or legacy markets, and agencies in DC like the FDA and the DOJ and DEA point fingers at each other, all taking their sweet time on moving the plant to Schedule III, or completely descheduling. This is an industry that can positively impact the economy, drive jobs and tax dollars into local communities. NORML is one of the leading reform groups in the country, and their director of government relations is Morgan Fox. He is a regular contributor to this news program, and PCM founder Jimmy Young talked to him about these issues and more.
All right. Thank you very much, Alaina. So happy to be joined by Morgan Fox, the Director of Government Relations for NORML down there in Washington, D.C. He's a regular contributor to We Talk News and Pro Cannabis Media Productions, and we thank him for that. Morgan, always good to see you.
Great to see you, Jimmy.
Tell me, please, what is going on with the DOJ now? Is it the DEA? Is it the FDA? Is it the DEA? Who is in charge of who's going to make a decision to get us to reform? Because I heard the White House press secretary mention the fact, well, now it's in the DOJ's, world now. And I'm like, I haven't heard that. Tell me, please, where are we with rescheduling, the DEA ever making a decision? What's the latest?
Well, I mean, we're in the same place that we have been for months now since Department of Health and Human Services submitted its recommendations to the DEA. DEA has final jurisdiction over where cannabis is placed in the Controlled Substances Act. Of course, Congress could easily change that. And there have been hundreds of cannabis activists on Capitol Hill this week urging their members of Congress on both chambers and both sides of the aisle to do just that. But obviously, everybody is still kind of waiting with bated breath to see what the DEA is going to do. There have been rumors that there could be an announcement today. I don't put much stock in those rumors. The DEA traditionally has taken its sweet time announcing anything, and it generally has stuck with the status quo. Despite the fact that HHS has recommended that they move cannabis to Schedule 3, despite the fact that the White House has been pressuring them to announce a rescheduling notice, we're still not really hearing anything from it. And I would caution anybody that hears rumors that it could be like, any day to really take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, or something else. And after all, it is 420 week. And I know there are going to be plenty of activities in all sorts of dispensaries from coast to coast. And at least now, Morgan, people are getting more and more used to the fact that the industry likes to celebrate at 4:20 in the afternoon, and also on April 20th, it happens to land on a Saturday. So are we getting more acceptance of where we're at as a society?
Well, I think a more important change that I've noticed over the years is one that directly is related to activism and advocacy. Back in the day, 420 was pretty much like entirely focused on just like the cannabis culture. As a professional activist, I would be able to like have more or less a day off. Nowadays, as my colleague Mike Lejewski at DPA, I think really put perfectly, is that being a cannabis advocate in April is like working retail in December. It is just absolutely brutal. And that is a really good development because there's a lot more focus on policy now than there ever has been. I mean, just yesterday, we saw the reintroduction of the Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act, CAOA, in the Senate, as well as the introduction of the HOPE Act on the Senate side, to mirror the bill that currently exists on the House side, that we are, fingers crossed, going to be able to pair with banking reform and be able to push through in the next couple of months. So, while it might be exhausting, I really like the fact that like things have changed so much over the last decade and even the last couple of years, to the point where 420 is about the fight for freedom and the fight against injustice in equal parts now with a celebration of the plant.
That interview in its entirety is available on the procannabismedia.com website and will be released on Thursday on YouTube and other social media platforms. So now let's get our Washington, D.C. report with Andrew Behringer.
I'm Andrew Behringer, and this is the D.C. Area Report for We Talk News. After the annual 420 cannabis celebration came and went, cannabis remains strictly prohibited under federal law. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's push for legalization failed to gain traction before April 20th, which came as no surprise to many people. When pressed on the administration's stance, the White House press secretary reiterated that cannabis rescheduling is an independent process led by HHS and the Department of Justice, guided by evidence. No action is expected from the Biden administration on this issue. On Capitol Hill, the prospect of passing even modest cannabis reforms like the SAFE Banking Act appear bleak in the Republican-controlled House. GOP Speaker Mike Johnson is unlikely to take up cannabis banking due to fears of alienating his conservative caucus further amidst a leadership crisis. However, there are bipartisan efforts to attach cannabis banking provisions to other must-pass legislation like a cryptocurrency regulation bill. While details are still being finalized, Senate leaders like Schumer view the Safe Banking Act as a very high priority and are engaged in productive talks to get it through Congress by merging it with other bills. As 420 came and went without meaningful federal reform, the cannabis policy landscape remains gridlocked for now between an entrenched White House and a divided Congress leading into the 2024 elections. I'm Andrew Berenger, reporting for We Talk News.
Now, just on the other side of the Potomac River in D.C. is Virginia. And you know, that's been the site of one of the most upsetting pieces of news for advocates in quite a few months. You might remember that the Virginia legislature handed their governor, Glenn Youngkin, a bill to legalize adult use in that state. He could have signed it, left it unsigned, and it would have become law, or he could have vetoed it. Well, unfortunately, that governor vetoed it. And that was a gut punch for many advocates in Virginia who had helped move it through their state legislature. Now, as for the 420 celebrations in that state, well, one was scheduled and then postponed this week. Joe Parsons has the full story about that 420 Fest, an event that was supposed to be this past weekend but had to be postponed due to lack of sponsorship. Did that stop event organizers from having a few days of fun and music and nothing but fun and music? No way, sons of Yazgar. The show must go on, except this time it was free. Joe has more from his Old Dominion state.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection, and this is your Virginia Cannabis Report on We Talk News. I hope everyone had a happy and safe 420 weekend. And here's what went down, or shall I say, what didn't go down in Virginia over the holiday. After a disappointing month with 3 out of the 4 cannabis bills getting rejected, a lot of us were hoping to unwind and celebrate 420 this year at the Virginia 420 Festival. But unfortunately, with only 36 hours of the main gates opening to both events, the lead organizer of the festival, Winston Marston, sent notice to several of the bands, get this, via Facebook, that the entire festival was canceled. This was the only notice that anyone got. With bands and vendors already en route, and some even setting up for the show, it caused more than a little concern, to say the least. While Winston Marston has not spoken to the media directly, he has posted on the event webpage that he takes full responsibility, and that the money just wasn't there. He states that due to low pre-ticket sales, investors just simply pulled out, and he felt like he had no other choice. He has vowed again to try next year with better planning, but this may be a difficult goal to reach after this epic event failure. However, I did go to Garrett Farms in Salem on the planned launch day to get their side of the story and what happened to cause this 11th hour breakdown. Myself and Fox News got some answers, along with a super cool announcement that Playlist for Life and Garrett Farms would still throw on a completely free event, regardless, to help vendors recoup their losses and to not completely disappoint the people that still wanted a show. Here's a clip from that interview with Ian Hill from Garrett Farms and Deanna Marson from Playlist for Life.
So basically what ended up happening, there really wasn't a whole lot of budgeting done till about halfway through the event planning process. And once that started to realize there just wasn't enough money, at that point we started counting pre-sale tickets. And when the pre-sale tickets didn't offset the cost of the expenses, it ended up just being, we're not going to end up having enough money to pay for this. So the plan right now, we are just throwing a free event. This is the festival that the fans saved. We had canceled the event. Everything was over and done with. And then all of a sudden, the vendors started showing up, and they started coming out, and they said, we've got nowhere else to be. The band started calling in and saying, we've got nowhere else to play. So Deanna here came in and started setting up, booking all the bands, putting together a playlist. And we said, enough people have spent enough money on this event. The money's out there. I've been talking about money for 2 weeks now. I'm sick and tired of talking about money. Everything's free. Let's do it for free. No vendor fees, no gate fees, no camping fees. Come on out. It's free. We're all out here to have a good time. Let's focus on that and not worry about what got canceled.
I remember that. It was only made sense that we had to save it. It had to go on, but all those who wanted to participate, it's a great idea. And like Ian was saying, a lot of things were already in place, and there was no way Playlist for Life or Garrett Farms was going to disappoint Rona.
I reached out to several of the artists, and many have agreed to do an interview with me on their side of the story and how it affected them. The first was the headliner for Thursday night at the Garrett Farms event, New Hampshire's amazing reggae band, Roots of Creation and Grateful Dub Band. I was contacted by founder and frontman Brett Wilson so he could tell me his feeling on the botched event. I went all the way to Falls Church, Virginia, to the historic State Theater to catch up with Brett and check out what could have been at the 420 Festival. Here's a clip from that interview.
What irked me the most about this situation is typically you'll get a message to a booking agent or a message to a manager, or maybe even the venue will reach out to you personally,
but not a Facebook post.
Send you a message, even if it's not a personal message. Maybe you'll be blind carbon copied on a message, and it's like, just a heads up, we're putting out this statement. This is how I'm going to handle it. You know, I lost my investor. There's nothing I can do about it. Maybe something he won't put out to the public, but just a little explanation. So you're like, oh, okay. Like, I get where you're coming from. You're a human being. I'm a human being. Like, this is understandable. But this is the first time in history that anything has ever been canceled, to my recollection. And we've done about 150 shows a year that's been canceled by notification on Facebook.
Now, as you can see, I've been super busy keeping up with all the events that shape this year's 420 in the Commonwealth. I will continue to follow up and bring you more interviews with some of the other artists as they develop. You can check out longer versions of the interview with Ian Hill and Deanna Marson on my blog YouTube channel, Virginia Cannabis Connection, along with footage from the show in Falls Church, including over 40 minutes of awesome concert footage that you won't find anywhere else. A one-on-one version of the interview with Brett Wilson will also be available next week on Pro Cannabis Media, so be sure to catch that as well. Well, that's all for this week's Virginia Cannabis Report from the Virginia Cannabis Connection, and reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Joe Parsons. Until next time, stay lifted.
Some of the largest companies, as you mentioned, Tilton Weed Maps, Harborside, Green Solutions, Medicine Man, many of them have had successful exits. We've made good money in the industry. We want to now give back. We want to now help the small guy or gal that has an idea but doesn't have the friends and family, doesn't have the connections, doesn't have their own equity to contribute. We want to help those guys get into the industry, be able to, realize their dreams, be able to do something in addition to what it is they're currently doing now. This doesn't interfere with that. It's not an exclusive. And what we want to do is we want to help birth some new entrepreneurs, because you need capital to be able to do that.
Coming up on We Talk News this week, WNBA superstar and Olympic champion Brittany Griner gets busted at a Russian airport for carrying hash oil.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alaina Pinto, and this is Weed Talk News.
Hey, everybody. It's Brandon Jones with Big Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Green Finger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Matthew Friedlander, coming to you from the owner's office here at Skagit Organics.
I'm Amie Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
My name's Tom. You can find me over at Cannabis and Legalization News.
I'm Jill Goldsberry with Weed Talk News New Jersey, and we are back.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
Our Canadian correspondent with Weed Talk News, Debi Facey, with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
I'm Doug Miller from Highland Wall Street with this week's Cannabis Stock Report for Weed Talk News.
Welcome back to Weed Talk News. This is the B block, or the second section of our show. I'm Alaina Pinto. Now let's talk about this amazing scam of $700 million that has been going on for a few years. An international investigation exposed the con, and 9 people were arrested around the world. It's called Juicy Fields, a cannabis cultivation crowdsourcing platform, and it is considered the biggest fraud case in the cannabis industry. It involved 400 law enforcement officers in 11 countries, and Europol was at the center of the investigation because Europe is where the majority of the 186,000 people who were cheated out of an investment were based. There are now reports that at least one of the persons who was arrested had ties to the Dominican Republic, but information is just now being released. Since this was an international operation, let's go north of the border to the legalized nation of Canada. Here's Debi Facey with the Canadian Strain of the Week.
This is your Canadian correspondent, Debi Facey, with the Canadian Strain of this week. So what we have in Canada is an increase of the official year from 2022 to 2023, which is a 25% increase. And we have found that Toronto and Vancouver, or I should say Ontario, are the most popular here in Canada when it comes to tokers. Next, what we have is within the Canadian budget that just came out, which is a 430 page book. It mentioned the legitimacy around the tax regime of cannabis once, which means that we aren't necessarily paying attention to what most of our retailers are asking for when it comes to alleviance and some sort of sense when it comes to the taxes. Hopefully we'll get some more information. I'll be able to share that with you. And last but not least, for 420, which I hope you all had a great time, we had in Prince George, Canada, they had their first 420 party, which was a block party, and they shut down the whole entire street. Probably would have been really cool to see. But that is something that they highlighted, and for our Canadian strain, that's pretty much it. But I hope you all had a great 420 and an awesome weekend. Peace.
Did you know that there are at least 200,000 people with cannabis convictions on their criminal records in Arizona? Well, now it's time for ice cream. You're like, what? It's true. Okay. Specifically, Ben & Jerry's ice cream from their Vermont home base is joining the American Civil Liberties Union call for states to expunge and pardon those who are currently still serving prison terms for non-violent possession crimes. So here's Karen Black with more on that news from Arizona.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Ben & Jerry aren't the only ones working on expungements in Arizona. In a joint effort called Reclaim Your Future, the Arizona Justice Project, Tucson Prosecutor's Office, Southern Arizona Legal Aid, and the University of Arizona Civil Rights Clinic are helping residents of Tucson and Pima County erase their past cannabis convictions, estimated to be between 12 and 17,000. Since January, nearly 200 people have had their records expunged, and with increased awareness and resources, the city hopes to dramatically increase that number in the coming months. In other news, the winners of the 2024 Tucson Cannabis Bowl have been announced. Earth's Healing took home awards for Best Delivery Service and New Patient Special, while D2 Dispensaries nabbed Best Waiting Room and Customer Service. iLava dominated the vape category, winning 3 of 4 awards. Congratulations to all the winners chosen by readers of the Tucson Weekly, where you can find the full list. Also in Tucson, the Sonoran Cannabis Expo was held 420, showcasing 15 brands from across the state and country. Meanwhile, in Yuma County, the Anti-Drug Coalition launched a 12-week anti-cannabis campaign called Just Because It's Legal Doesn't Mean It's Safe. The group claims cannabis use has adverse effects on mental health, including anxiety, depression, and psychosis. Moving up north, Copper State Farms is now the largest employer in Snowflake, Arizona, a small Mormon community of about 6,000 people. While the town was initially divided about bringing cannabis to the area, residents of one of the poorest counties in the nation are now largely grateful for the 300 jobs at Copper State's indoor cultivation facility, which was once a tomato greenhouse. Finally, in a different kind of 420 event, the United Food and Commercial Workers Union Local 99 hosted a rally at Curaleaf's 7th and Camelback location in Phoenix, calling for safer working conditions, full-time employment, a living wage, and dignity on the job for Arizona cannabis workers. This comes after a recent National Labor Relations Board decision claiming Curaleaf Camelback violated federal law by refusing to recognize and bargain with the union, which company officials deny. That's all for the Arizona Cannabis Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Weed Talk News.
I'm Tina Tasaka with Weed Talk News, helping out this week. So, what about the kids? It's the line most prohibitionists use when warning about the dangers of cannabis. Well, if you trust the Journal of American Medicine in Pediatrics, there's a new study just published that included survey data of 890,000 teens from 47 states over a 10-year period from 2011 to 2021. Their conclusions were similar to other studies that legalization, quote, was not associated with adolescents' likelihood or frequency of cannabis use, unquote. The report also saw modest decreases in teen use of alcohol and e-cigarettes. It seems that teens are finding more information about the impact social drugs on the development of their brain function and have decided to be responsible or abstain from use. There's certainly more information available for all in those legal states now. If you don't like the Journal of American Medicine, then how about the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention? It released similar results from another study in 2023 that showed the percentage of high school kids who ever tried cannabis fell 30% during the time of legalization. So when all those prohibitionists, worry about legalization's impact on the kids know more about than the prohibitionists do, and they're being responsible and using it less.
We start our state reports with two legal states in the Midwest who are both setting sales records. Brandon Jones in Missouri and Amie Carter in Michigan.
I'm Amie Carter from Michigan Weedsters with this week's Weed Talk News. March Michigan cannabis sales record hits $289 million, 16% higher than 2023. According to a report from Michigan's Cannabis Regulatory Agency, adult use cannabis sales in the state jumped from $239.9 million in March 2023 to $286.8 million in March 2024. However, medical cannabis sales saw a steep decline, plummeting from $9.8 million to just $2.1 million over the same period, which makes sense given the huge decline in patient cardholders. What many Michiganders don't realize is that they are not protected under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act unless they have a Michigan Medical Marijuana card. The High Times Cannabis Cup announced they will be coming to Michigan this year. This event will be the 5th ever competition that is open to the Michigan public and will see the largest pool of judges in history. In fact, this will be the largest cannabis cup in High Times history overall. Judging kits go on sale in June, and the award ceremony will be held on September 15th. Michigan had several 420 events over the weekend. Happy 420 to you all. I'm Amie Carter with the Michigan Weedsters.
California remains the #1 cannabis job market in the country with 76,618 jobs. And Michigan is second at just under 47,000 jobs. Florida is third with 30,238. And Florida is a medical-only state that has over 800,000 registered patients. In that state, there is a major policy battle being waged. On one side is the Smart and Safe Florida group, charged with getting the adult use legalization ballot question approved by over 60% of the voters in the fall. But a recent poll organized by USA Today suggests that it won't be easy. Only 49% of the 1,000 resident voters said they would vote for legalization. You can bet that there will be millions of dollars being spent in that state to inform the voters of the benefits of a legal regulated market. While the other side, that includes their governor, Ron DeSantis, claims it will cause the state so many more problems that it's not worth it. So, how's that working out in California, you ask? Well, LeVanna Vassau has our California report every week. Here she is.
LeVanna Vassau from the Bay Sesh reporting from the live for PCM with this week's Pennsylvania report for Weed Talk News. I'm at the Pennsylvania Cannabis Festival, as you can see. It's a huge festival, 2 barns. This is the second day of the event. There are all kinds of plants, seeds, weed, mushrooms, lots of cool glass. It's really taken me back to the days of medical in California. Similar vibe. A lot more of a community, a lot more culture, a lot more sharing seems to be going on out here, and collaboration. It's really cool to see. I'm about to see Mendo Dope Boys perform at 2 o'clock on the main stage. I guess 18,000 people attended this event just yesterday on 420. Today is 421, the Sunday, day after. And as you can see, there's a ton of people here again. And I just went through hundreds of vendors, plants, seeds, clothes. There's like a lot of food vendors, which is an awesome thing. And just really great vibe, really nice people, really nice products, lots of farmers.
I'm LeVanna Vassau from PCM reporting for Weed Talk News.
Now we'll take a quick break and we have more news after this.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Now let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore, so I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now, if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weedgets filtration system. What? The Weedgets.com, Weedgets, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. The guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1,300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weedgets.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind.
Welcome back to Weed Talk News. I'm Alaina Pinto, and this is the C block or final section of our weekly roundup of cannabis news from coast to coast. Massachusetts-based Agrify has been sold to Nature's Miracle in an all-stock deal of $6.35 million. This acquisition will provide benefits for each company as Nature's Miracle gains access to Agrify's SaaS and AI technology, as well as their market share in cannabis extraction. While Agrify will benefit from Nature's Miracle's advanced technology in the vertical farming sector, here's our man, who is high on Wall Street, Doug Miller, to dissect this deal and see what impact it has on their stock price.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. That's right, Nature's Miracle announced it has entered into a term sheet to acquire 100% of all outstanding shares of Agrify Corporation. Under the terms of the agreement, Nature's Miracle expects to acquire Agrify through issuing shares of Nature's Miracle common stock, which would result in Nature's Miracle wholly owning Agrify. Each shareholder of Agrify would be expected to receive approximately 45 cents of a share of Nature's Miracle common stock for each share of Agrify common stock, subject to customary adjustments. Based on the fully diluted shares outstanding of 15,174,501, including warrants, and Nature's Miracle closing price of 93 cents as of April 16th, 2024, Agrify's equity is valued at $6,350,528 or 0.4185 cents per share. The transaction is expected to close within 6 months of this announcement, subject to the completion of mutual due diligence, shareholder approval, and customary closing conditions. So let's see how this affects the stock chart. Agrify is trading around 27 cents, and it appears to be pulling back. So I'm going to keep my eye on this to see if it wants to reverse, because Nature's Miracle is trading around 94 cents and it's curling up out of the basement and it's getting ready to run. It appears this acquisition will benefit the company. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
One more note from the West Coast. Delivery drivers in California were using the leverage of April 20th to make their employment concerns heard. And they were. And now they have settled. The Union of Food and Commercial Workers Union negotiated for 9 months with the Ease Cannabis Company. That company has a presence throughout the state of California, so using 420 seems like it was a good strategy. Just back from MJ Unpacked on the East Coast, Marianne Cursetjee made it to Oregon to file her report from her home base.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. 420 in Portland was fantastic. It was a bright and sunny day. Lots of block parties at local dispensaries. Sadly, 2 large events were shut down by authorities. One for county building code violations that could have been dangerous, and the other one was shut down by the OLCC. Oregon needs to step up the advocacy for social consumption. The industry has been asking for it for years, and it seems like regulators and enforcement continue to be the priority. In other news, several Oregon brands were represented last week at MJ Unpacked in Atlantic City. We are sharing a few images highlighting the amazing energy and excitement that happens when the cannabis industry joins together. Rebel Spirit Farms and Alibi were both there to share their brand stories. The panels were filled with amazing experts sharing thoughts about genetics, quality, and cannabis science. We were able to view the eclipse from the boardwalk, so it was fun sharing that experience with colleagues. The subject of intoxicating hemp was a recurring theme. Many brands are launching direct-to-consumer products using hemp-derived intoxicants. And as always, the after party produced by David Tran and Fairchild Events was a fantastic way to finish the show. That's the Oregon Cannabis Report for this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Weed Talk News.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies reporting this week's Nevada report for Weed Talk News. U.S. Senator Jackie Rosen, Democrat, Nevada, has introduced a bill to establish a federal grant program to cover the costs of expunging and sealing records for people with low-level marijuana convictions in states where it's now legal. Rosen describes herself as a strong advocate for cannabis reform in Congress. It's called the Harnessing Opportunities by Pursuing Expungement Act, and it provides funding to update record-keeping technology, automate the expungement process, and also provide for various legal clinics and support. The HOPE Act was originally introduced in 2021 in the U.S. House of Representatives and then reintroduced there last year, but Senator Rosen Action is the first to introduce it in the Senate. She's currently the sole Senate sponsor. Senator Rosen said having a record for something that is now legal in our state threatens Nevadans' ability to get a job, apply for housing, and contribute to our state's economy. That's why I'm introducing this bipartisan bill to help expunge and seal certain marijuana convictions in the states like Nevada, where it has been legalized or decriminalized. This bill authorizes $2 million a year through 2032. Rosen's bill is unique. It's extending grant eligibility to tribal entities and including some states that don't have full marijuana legalization. Last year, Governor Joe Lombardo vetoed a bill that would have simplified the process for sealing those marijuana conviction records. The HOPE Act would override that. Let's hope so. We'll continue to follow this progress, Senator Rosen. It noted the senator helped introduce the bipartisan Secure and Fair Enforcement Regulation Banking Act to ensure that legal cannabis businesses have access to banking and insurance services, and also introduced the Fair Access for Cannabis Small Business Act to ensure that legally operating cannabis businesses have equal access to small business administration resources. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technology, and that's it for the 702 and Weed Talk News.
The race to become the 25th state to legalize adult use continues, but the frontrunner might be Pennsylvania. That's where Claudia Post operates, and she is right in the middle of the advocacy movement in the Keystone State. Here's Claudia's report.
I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'm right here in the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, reporting for Weed Talk News. Last week, Pennsylvania lawmakers held yet again another hearing on marijuana legislation, and the conversation centered around social justice, social equity, and ending cannabis prohibition in the Keystone State. Representative Eamon Brown filed a new marijuana legislation bill that he described as grounded in safety and social equity. Members of the House Health Subcommittee on Healthcare took testimony from advocates and stakeholders about broader reform. I noted that we had somebody from Massachusetts on that panel. I was really dismayed because Massachusetts is not very well known in our industry for having a great marijuana program. Matter of fact, it's very onerous. So I hope that we take information from other states, because there's so many more states that have great programs, and we should piece together those good qualities and bring them into Pennsylvania. As we look at this, we want to promote public safety, promote social justice, promote revenue benefits for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and its taxpayers. What an excellent point. We need to ensure that the criminal justice piece is addressed, that there is automatic expungement, that penalties are reduced, and that folks who are on parole are not penalized for cannabis activities. So that's a wrap from Pennsylvania. I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'll be back next week to talk about what's hot and what's not in Pennsylvania. From Weed Talk News, have a great week.
And finally tonight, some thoughts about 420 and its role in the cannabis advocacy movement. It started in 1971 with a bunch of guy friends from San Rafael High School in California called the Waldos. They used to meet after school at the Louis Pasteur statue across the street to catch an after-school buzz. Well, one of them had a connection with a member of the Grateful Dead rock band, and the rest is history. We all who are in this business sacrifice quite a bit, whether it's closed bank accounts, turned down for apartments, mortgages, jobs, or loans. The stigma is still deeply ingrained in many people. So no matter why you choose to be in this industry, you have this day to reflect on your now educated, responsible use of this plant medicine. So this is one day in the year where it seems the world is starting to accept that cannabis is here to stay. No matter how hard feds and state government try to make it as hard as possible to operate a business in this space. Your passion for the cause should be saluted, and no, you are not alone. One day we will get to normalization and acceptance and perhaps legalization. Perhaps, but the battle continues. We at Pro Cannabis Media salute your dedication and sacrifice for the cause. And just remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. That will do it for this edition of Weed Talk News. I'm Alaina Pinto. We will see you next week.
And what we want to do is we want to help birth some new entrepreneurs, because you need capital to be able to do that. You know, we feel like the social equity licenses are a first start, but if you don't give that person cash or credit or money, it's like giving someone a Ferrari with no gas in it. You can't get any place.